Somewhere right now, a manual transmission is being deleted from a production line for the last time. Not because it failed, because almost nobody ordered it. Car by car, the stick shift is disappearing, and most owners have no idea they are sitting on the last of something. Automakers don't announce when a manual dies. They just stop offering it, and one day the option is gone forever. That is the moment collectors wait for, because that is the moment a normal car becomes a locked vault. Right now, in driveways and used car lots, there are manual cars that people still treat like ordinary transportation. In 5 years, some of them will be worth double. In 10, some will be worth 5 times what they sell for today. The pattern always repeats. Automatics get treated as disposable. Manuals get treated as an inconvenience, right up until they vanish, and then everyone wants one. Today we are counting down 10 manual cars that are running out faster than most people realize. The hidden reasons collectors are hunting them right now, and the one at the very end that has turned a dying feature into a 6-figure obsession. In 2005, a BMW owner in California walked into a dealership and made a trade he thought was smart. He handed over his 6-speed E46 M3 for the newer SMG version. The automated sequential gearbox BMW was pushing as the future. Sales reps called it faster. Track drivers called it advanced. He believed them. Within 2 years, he was trying to buy his old car back. He couldn't find it. And when he found a replacement with a real clutch pedal, it cost him more than what he originally paid new. That single mistake has repeated itself thousands of times, and it's the reason the manual E46 M3 has quietly become one of the most fought-over cars of its generation. BMW's own sales data from the era tells the real story. As SMG take rates climbed, manual orders shrank year after year, until the 6-speed became the version nobody planned for and everybody now wants. Enthusiasts didn't realize what was happening in real time. They only understood it once the manuals were gone from lots, and the SMG cars were the only ones left sitting unsold. What makes this dangerous for buyers today isn't the price. It's the assumption that this was a one-time BMW decision. It wasn't. It was the opening move in a pattern that would repeat across nearly every performance brand that came after it, and the next one on this list took that same mistake even further. The rotary engine that made the RX-7 famous is also the reason so many of them are gone. Rotary engines run hot, they rev fast, and they punish careless drivers in ways a normal piston engine never will. For years, the easiest way to kill an FD wasn't a crash. It was an automatic transmission paired with a driver who didn't understand what the car needed. Here's the detail most owners never learned. The manual gearbox on the FD wasn't just a driving preference. It was part of how the rotary survived. A skilled driver working the clutch could manage engine load, keep RPMs in the range where the rotary stayed healthy, and avoid the kind of lazy throttle behavior that cooked apex seals inside the engine. Automatic FDs, by comparison, developed a reputation among mechanics as the versions most likely to need an expensive rebuild before 100,000 miles. So while owners were burning through automatics, replacing engines, and eventually giving up on the car entirely, the manual versions were the ones being protected, stored, and passed down carefully. Mazda never publicized rotary failure rates. Independent shops did, through years of repair records that told a story the factory never would. The result is a shrinking number that specialty insurers and collector groups now track closely. Estimates put the surviving unmodified manual FDs in the US in the low thousands, and that number drops every year a rotary finally gives out for good. A collector in Texas almost sent his S2000 to a scrapyard. The clutch was slipping, the interior smelled like a decade of neglect, and the paint had faded to the point where he assumed the car was worthless. He listed it for parts. Before anyone bought it, he pulled the VIN out of curiosity, mostly to see what year he was dealing with. What he found stopped him from hitting confirm on the listing. The S2000 he was about to part out was an early AP1, built before Honda softened the car's throttle response and detuned the high-revving F20C engine for later models. This was the version that redlined at 9,000 revolutions per minute using nothing but precise mechanical engineering, no turbo, no forced induction, just Honda's engineers proving how far a naturally aspirated four-cylinder could be pushed. Once Honda revised the formula for the AP2, that specific combination of engine and gearing was never built again. He didn't scrap it. He rebuilt the clutch, restored the interior, and kept the car. 2 years later, a private buyer offered him nearly triple what the parts listing would have brought. Stories like this are becoming common in S2000 forums, where owners are slowly realizing that a car once seen as an affordable weekend toy was actually a limited engineering statement. The AP1's rarest gearboxes are believed to number in the low thousands of surviving examples worldwide, a number that keeps shrinking every time one gets tracked, modified, or written off. Ask 10 superfans how common the manual Mk4 Turbo is, and most will guess wrong. The car is so famous, so deeply woven into car culture, that people assume manuals must have been the standard choice. The truth surprises even longtime owners. When Toyota exported the twin-turbo Supra to the US between 1993 and 1998, the 6-speed manual was never the volume seller. Automatic versions moved faster off dealer lots, partly because American buyers at the time still treated performance cars as something to cruise, not row through gears on a track. Manual take rates for the turbo model are estimated to have landed somewhere in the range of 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 units sold, depending on the model year. And that's before accounting for how many of those manuals were later crashed, stolen, or exported overseas during the JDM boom of the 2010s. That mismatch between reputation and reality is exactly why the manual Mk4 has become one of the most searched, most faked, and most disputed cars in the collector market. Sellers know the badge alone drives interest. Some have swapped automatic Supras onto manual badged listings, hoping buyers won't check the transmission code stamped on the frame. For buyers who do their homework, the real number matters more than the reputation. Genuine numbers matching manual Mk4 turbos are far rarer than the culture around this car would ever suggest, and that gap between myth and reality is only getting wider. When Honda introduced the NSX's automatic option, they called it Sport Shift and marketed it as the smarter way to drive a supercar. For a while, it worked. Buyers who wanted a daily usable exotic chose the automatic, and the manual NSX quietly became the version enthusiasts saw as the purest choice, a nice-to-have rather than a necessity. Then the market flipped, and it flipped hard. As collectors began reassessing the NSX in the 2010s, praising Honda's engineering, its all-aluminum body, its Ayrton Senna-tuned chassis, the automatic version became a liability instead of a convenience. Buyers realized the Sport Shift transmission sapped power, added weight, and dulled the exact responsiveness that made the NSX special in the first place. Values on automatic NSX models stalled. Manual NSX values climbed past them and never looked back. Today, 2 NSX models can share the identical body, the identical engine. Americans couldn't legally own one. That single restriction did more to inflate the R34 GT-RS value than any spec sheet ever could. Nissan built one of the most capable performance cars of its era, and then U.S. import law made sure almost nobody in America could drive it home. The 25-year import rule turned the R34 into forbidden fruit. Enthusiasts who grew up seeing it in video games and magazines could only watch as early examples became eligible 1 year at a time, starting with 1999 models becoming importable around 2024. Each year that passes, another slice of R34 production crosses the eligibility line, and each time it happens, prices for that specific model year jump almost overnight. Manual V-Spec 2 models are the ones collectors chase hardest, because Nissan built them as the performance-focused variant with a mechanical limited-slip differential and a suspension tuned sharper than the standard trim. Once these cars become legal, most don't end up parked in driveways. They go straight into private collections, climate-controlled storage, or overseas buyers willing to pay a premium for a clean, unmodified example. That creates a strange effect. The moment a car becomes easier to legally own is often the exact moment it becomes harder to actually buy. Every newly eligible model year adds legal supply and removes real supply in the same breath. And that clock is still running for the R34 models that haven't turned 25 yet. Porsche doesn't usually admit when a tradition is dying, but its own sales figures did the admitting for them. Through the 996 and early 997 generations, manual take rates on the 911 collapsed from a majority of buyers to a shrinking minority, as more customers chose Porsche's automated Tiptronic system for daily comfort and easier resale to less experienced buyers. For years, this didn't matter to collectors. A 911 was a 911, and the transmission was treated as a footnote. That changed once Porsche themselves confirmed manual take rates had fallen into the single digits for some model years, a number that stunned even longtime dealers when it became public. Suddenly, buyers who had ignored transmission type for over a decade started asking dealers a new question before anything else: is it a stick? The shift in dealer pricing happened faster than almost anyone expected. Manual 996 and 997 models that once sold for the same price as Tiptronic versions began listing above them, then meaningfully above them, as specialty Porsche dealers realized they could no longer treat the two transmissions as interchangeable options. Some dealers now hold manual 911s back from public listings entirely, selling them privately to buyers on a waiting list before the car ever reaches a website. Porsche's badge has always carried weight. What's changed is that the badge alone no longer guarantees the value. The pedal count does. Two bidders wanted the same car, and neither one was willing to be the one who let it go. The car in question was a low-mile manual GT350, Ford's flat-plane crank tribute to European exotics, sitting on an auction block with a starting estimate that both bidders privately considered too low. One was a longtime Mustang collector who had missed out on a GT350 twice before. The other was a newer buyer who had just sold a modified daily driver and wanted something he'd never touch a wrench on again. The bidding opened calmly. It didn't stay that way. Each time one bidder paused, the other pushed again, and the room started to notice that neither man was bidding against the auction house's estimate anymore. They were bidding against each other, and both understood exactly why. Ford had already confirmed the GT350's high-revving naturally aspirated V8, one of the most celebrated engines the brand ever built, would not carry forward into future Mustang generations. Whatever was on that block wasn't just a used car. It was one of a shrinking number of examples featuring a drivetrain combination Ford had already discontinued. The room went quiet as the numbers kept climbing past where either bidder had planned to stop. Neither one backed down, and by the time the hammer finally came down, the final price had done something no one in that room expected, and it wouldn't be the last time it happened that year. Dodge didn't retire the manual Viper. Dodge retired the entire car, and the manual gearbox went down with it. That distinction matters more than most buyers realize. Unlike the BMW M3, the Porsche 911, or the Supra, the Viper never offered an automatic option in its final generation. There was no easier version, no comfort-focused alternative, no softer choice for buyers who wanted the badge without the commitment. Every single Viper built between 2013 and 2017 came with a 6-speed manual transmission and nothing else, a decision Dodge stood by even as competitors chased broader audiences with paddle shifters and automated gearboxes. When Dodge ended Viper production in 2017, they weren't just discontinuing a model. They were closing the book on America's last analog supercar, a car built with no traction control safety net in early years, no automatic option ever, and a naturally aspirated V10 that demanded a driver who actually understood what they were doing behind the wheel. Production across that entire final generation stayed under 3,000 units total, spread across multiple trims and special editions. Owners who bought new Vipers during those final years weren't just buying a sports car. They were buying the end of a philosophy. Dodge has teased revivals since, but nothing has replaced what the Viper represented, a supercar built with zero compromise and zero apology, and that combination is one manufacturers have shown little interest in repeating. Ferrari once treated the manual transmission as an inconvenience they were trying to engineer away. Now it's the single most valuable feature Ferrari has ever put in a car. When the F1 paddle shift system arrived in the late 1990s, Ferrari marketed it as the future: faster shifts, easier control, technology borrowed straight from their Formula One program. Buyers listened. Take rates for the traditional gated manual. The version with the exposed metal shift gate and a mechanical clutch pedal collapsed almost immediately. By the time the F430 arrived in the mid-2000s, gated manuals had become a special order rarity most dealers barely bothered stocking. Ferrari expected the manual to fade quietly into history. Instead, collectors turned it into the most obsessed-over feature in the brand's modern catalog. The metal gate itself, once seen as an old-fashioned inconvenience next to paddle shifters, became the exact detail buyers now search for first. Auction houses started separating listings by transmission type entirely because the price gap became too large to present as a footnote. Gated manual 360 and F430 models now routinely sell for 2 to 3 times what an equivalent paddle shift version brings. And in the rarest color and spec combinations, that gap has pushed into six-figure territory on its own. Ferrari never brought the gated manual back. They didn't need to. The remaining supply has become the whole point. A mechanical relic from the last era before Ferrari went fully digital, sitting inside cars most owners now refuse to sell at any price. That refusal is the same instinct we saw all the way back at the first car on this list. It just took a Ferrari badge for the rest of the world to finally notice. 10 cars, one pattern repeating itself over and over. The BMW owner who traded away his M3. The Supra fans who assumed manuals were common when they never were. The Ferrari collectors who now pay double for a feature the factory once tried to eliminate. None of these cars became valuable because manufacturers planned it that way. They became valuable because everyone stopped paying attention at the exact moment they should have paid the most. That's the real lesson hiding inside this list. Scarcity doesn't usually announce itself. It builds quietly, one overlooked trade-in, one convenience-driven purchase, one production line quietly dropping an option nobody asked to keep. By the time the pattern becomes obvious, the cars are already gone, and the only ones left belong to the people who never let theirs go. Every manual on this list started as an ordinary choice. Today, each one represents a version of the past that manufacturers have no intention of building again. The gap between the two is where their value lives, and that gap is only getting wider. So here's the question worth sitting with. Which manual do you already own, or wish you never sold? Drop it in the comments. And if today's list surprised you, the next video covers 10 more automotive decisions owners are going to regret making, starting with one nobody sees coming.